Welcome to Explore Classroom. My name is Jennifer Bergen. I'm an educator and a National Geographic explorer, and I will be your host today. At National Geographic, we believe that anyone can be an explorer and that you have the power to make a difference in the world, no matter how old you are. Explorer Classroom is here to inspire you with stories from the field and connect you with our National Geographic explorers live to answer your questions. But before we get into today's special Halloween lesson, I'd like to welcome all of our classes who are joining us today, especially Arlington Public Schools. Hey, All-Stars. Knock Primary in Pennsylvania, DeKalb County Middle School in Tennessee, the Kentucky School for the Blind, woot woot, welcome friends, Medina Homeschool in Mexico, Valencia and Victorious Homeschools in the Philippines, and Hawkesbury High School in Canada. Well, happy Halloween, everyone. We are so glad that you are joining us today for an extra spooky episode, all about creatures that ancient sailors feared more than pirates. I know, right? What could it be? These animals are responsible for sinking thousands of wooden ships all throughout history because they were eating them. And they continue to pose a threat to wooden structures in our oceans today. They're destroying piers all around the world. So what are we going to do? Today, we're going to find out. We are joined by explorer and marine biologist Reuben Shipway. He's an expert on these notorious wood-eating creatures called shipworms. Reuben is originally from the Midlands in the United Kingdom, but he's currently based in Saudi Arabia, where he works for the Organization for Conservation of Coral Reefs and Turtles at the Red Sea. In 2023, he traveled all the way to the Falkland Islands in the South Atlantic Ocean, and that's where he began his study of shipworms. How do they eat through wood? What's their role in our ecosystem? And what is their impact on our historical underwater sites, like a wooden shipwreck? We are so excited to have Reuben live with us today. He'll be teaching us all about shipwrecking worms, and he'll be answering your questions. Reuben, welcome to the show.
Hey Jennifer, great seeing you. Do you know
Oh,
what?
it's
I'm a little bit nervous. I didn't realize we were going to have a wizard. I think I can see Dumbledore from Forest Park and some amazing costumes there. So I'm a little bit nervous. We've got a wizard
oh,
watching
don't be
the
nervous. I'm
presentation.
sure we're
No,
all
okay.
very kind. I'm sure we'll
Okay,
be really good
fantastic.
to you. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Halloween. Let's kick off. Could you tell us exactly what is a shipworm? Why are they so feared?
That's my pleasure and happy Halloween to everybody. So shipworms are these wood-eating clams. So clams like a razor clam that many of you have probably eaten. And they plagued ancient mariners for millennia. And I want you to imagine now you're on a wooden vessel and you have these animals that can eat wood, and you're in the middle of the sea, and it's at night, like this spooky scene we're seeing right now. And you know that these animals are eating the boat beneath your feet. It must have been utterly terrifying. And these animals, they have eaten these vessels and they have changed the course of history. Now, I'm sure there are many people in our class right now that know who Christopher Columbus is. Well, I can tell you that in the 1500s, Christopher Columbus set sail to the New World, and he never made it. And he never made it because these animals, these shipworms, ate his entire fleet, and he got marooned in Jamaica. And in Jamaica, he wrote this letter to the King of Spain, and it said, "There was no remedy for the havoc which the worm had wrought. My ships were pierced by borers more than a honeycomb, and my crew entirely paralyzed by fear and in despair." And the records tell us that these ancient mariners, they could put their ears to the hulls of these vessels, and they could hear the terrifying sound of 1,000 shipworms eating the wood beneath their feet. Just imagine that for a second. How crazy is that? I think that's pretty crazy. And we have Columbus as an example, but pretty much all societies that used wooden sailing vessels, boats or rafts, etc., they had to face these animals. So there are all these really crazy examples of how they've changed the course of history. I want to, we're given an example of Columbus, which was 500 years ago. Let's go to something a little bit more recent. So in the 1920s, San Francisco, so the west coast of the US, they had all of this wooden coastal infrastructure, things like piers, jetties, etc. And there was this invasive species of shipworm that came in. It basically ate all these piers, and loads of San Francisco collapsed into the sea. And we think in today's money, that caused about $7 billion worth of damage. How terrifying is that? Crazy, right? Imagine what you could buy with 7 billion today. And every year around the world, we still think these animals are causing billions and billions of dollars worth of damage. So I think that's pretty scary.
Wow. With all of this historic and modern examples, I can't believe that I've never heard of these creatures before. Students, after hearing all about the damage that shipworms can cause, you're probably wondering, like me, what do they look like? So before we learn more from Reuben, we want to hear from you. Teachers, get close to your keyboards because you can answer on behalf of your class. Our question is, what do you think shipworms look the most like? A, an earthworm? I mean, they've got worm in their name. B, a little neck clam. Reuben did say that shipworms are clams after all. Or C, a sea monster. Are you imagining something much bigger and mythical? Perhaps a kraken? All right, go ahead and start putting your answers into the poll, teachers. I'm going to pause. I'm going to be quiet and let the students think and share their answers. And don't fear, you might just hear the sounds of a creaking wooden ship. Let's start the countdown. Oh, that was kind of spooky. All right, we've got a lot of results in. I see that in our Zoom poll, 63% of you believe that shipworms look like little neck clams. 32% of you say an earthworm, but only 4% say a sea monster. And YouTube, most of you said a clam. And then the second biggest response was a sea monster. But the smallest response was a worm. Well, thank you, students, for telling us what you think. Let's go to the expert. Reuben, what do shipworms, this feared creature, look like?
I think this is an example of where everybody is actually correct. I mean, they're shipworms because they live inside ships and they look like worms, but they are clams, and people did definitely think they were sea monsters. So everybody is absolutely correct there. And if people want to know roughly what they look like, well, I can show you a piece of wood that they live in. So we've got a piece of shipworm wood right here, and we can see the little holes that these animals make. And if I flip this round to the other side now, so you can see inside the wood, we start to see the massive amount of damage that these animals cause. Now, this is only a small piece of wood with some small animals in, and you can see some of these animals right here, or you can see the outline that these animals left inside the wood. So what do shipworms look like? Well, if we go to the next slide, we actually see what their shell looks like. So I want you to imagine now that I'm a big shipworm and we're looking at the head region right now. So we've got the head here. If I was to wear a hat, which would be their shell, like any other bivalve, that's basically what we're seeing here. And if this is what I call the shipworm selfie. And if we go to the next slide and we look in a little bit more detail, on this shell, we can actually see this shell is covered in thousands and thousands and thousands of tiny razor sharp teeth. And if we go one more slide over, if we increase the magnification just a little bit more, we actually see that these shells and these teeth on the shells, they actually look a little bit like I think this looks like a chainsaw or like a saw. And we can imagine this is how the animal uses its shell to drill into the wood. So if we go one more slide over, this is the world premiere of shipworms drilling in wood. And we can actually see, so I think the one on the bottom right hand corner is the best right now. We can actually see its little shell, and we can see these animals just meticulously and industrially digging into the wood. And I think you guys, I mean, this is one of the world premieres of these animals drilling into wood.
Wait,
I
so
think
no
it's
one else has seen this but us?
yeah, exactly. I think it's safe to say that there have been more people that have been in space than have seen this video. I mean, that's not true now because we have lots of our young little budding explorers seeing this video. But yeah, this is the first time this has been seen on camera. And if we go to the next slide now, so we can see their shells and we can see how they drill. This is what they actually look like, and there's not one size or shape. We can see they come in a lot of different varieties. We got one in the top right-hand corner, which is a little bit plump and it's quite white, and we can see its shell. If we go just underneath that one, we can see this one that's a bit longer and it's got these really weird ears. I mean, look at those feather-like structures. I think those structures are really beautiful. And every different species of shipworm has these different structures that scientists call pallets. And scientists use the structure of these pallets to tell all of these different species apart because every different species has a different shaped pallet. So for us as scientists, that's actually really, really useful. So if we go one more slide over now, I'm going to show you the monster of shipworms. All right. I'm sure a lot of you weren't thinking that they get particularly big, but I'm, and this is pretty amazing. This is a shipworm called Kufus that can grow to 1.8 meters in length. That's about 6 foot. That's a little bit smaller than I am. And we can see that it gets about as thick as an arm. So it can grow as tall as a tall man and about as thick as an arm, which is pretty cool. And this particular species is very, very rare. And when we can see that big white tube that it's got. When that tube was discovered, people actually thought they were dinosaur teeth. That's how big and weird this animal is. If we just go one more slide over, I've got one more video to show you. This is really incredible. So we call them shipworms because they eat wood. But this is a particular species that we found in the Philippines, and it eats the bedrock of a river. And over the course of time, because it's eating the bedrock of this river, it literally changes the course of the river. I think that's pretty remarkable. So we've seen all these different shapes and sizes of shipworms, and we've kind of gotten we've kind of seen a little bit of the different roles they have in nature. We've got this one that can change rivers. We've got one that can eat wood. And I just want you to imagine now, millions of tons of wood enters our world's oceans every year. And the reason we don't live in a sea of wood is because these animals break down that wood and they make that carbon available to the rest of the ecosystem. So they do actually play this really, really important role in nature.
Wow. Okay, this is fascinating, Reuben, because at first I just thought these slimy, feathery, squishy little creatures are a menace. But what you're saying is that they're important decomposers. And I
Mm.
know that fourth graders in my state of Virginia, we learn the importance of decomposing creatures. So it sounds like maybe they're not so evil. Maybe, I don't know, we'll have to learn more from you.
100%.
Students, I think we know a little bit more about shipworms now that's changing my opinion on them because we're learning how important they are to the ecosystem. But we also know their history and how they've been feared and caused problems for ancient sailors and the threat that they pose to wooden ships and wooden structures even today. So I'm just wondering, could a shipworm provide benefits to us humans. Students, what do you think? Hmm. Teachers, all right, come back to your keyboards. We're going to have you answer on behalf of your class. Again, our question is, how do you think shipworms can be useful or beneficial to humans? Maybe A, can we make skin lotion out of them? I mean, they're kind of slimy and I've had a snail mask before. Or B, a food source. Maybe we could eat them? I don't know. We'd have to cook them and put some sauce on, but what about C? Maybe they could make beautiful wood carvings. The wood that Reuben held up was actually kind of beautiful, even though it represented destruction. Or D, maybe they could make tunnels for us. I mean, if the ones from the Philippines can go through rock, maybe we could dig tunnels in all sorts of places. Teachers, you should see the poll on your screen. I'm going to pause again, give you some time to let all of your students share their answer, and let's start that countdown. All right, we've had some time. Our Zoom results say undoubtedly C, wood carvings. Would you put a beautiful wood carving in your home made by a shipworm? Hmm? And then the smallest amount of votes went to skin lotion. I don't know if it's because it maybe gives you the heebie-jeebies or you just don't think it's right. Our friends on YouTube, they also said wood carvings was the most, lotion the least likely. It's a good thing we've got Reuben with us. Thank you so much for sharing your answers and your thoughts. All right, let's hear from this expert. Reuben, what is the answer?
Oh,
Can be beneficial.
it's definitely the skin lotion. I'm actually 89 years old, but every night before I go to bed, I put some, shipworm mud mask on my face, which is why I look so radiant right now. Actually, so I've got an interesting story about this, about the tunnels. So it was this famous engineer in the UK, and he found a piece of shipworm wood along the banks of the Thames, and he looked at it and he goes, "If these little animals can do it, so shall we." And from this, he built something called the tunneling shield, based on the shell of the shipworm, and that allowed him to build the Thames Tunnel, which was the first tunnel under a body of water, and it later became part of the London Underground. So if any of you have ever traveled on the tube or in any kind of train that goes underground, you've got a shipworm to thank.
Oh my
Pretty
gosh,
cool, right?
biomimicry. We imitate what the animals do best.
Exactly. Biomimicry. So actually the real answer here, so there's lots of different answers here, but the real answer here, the thing that I think is the most important is actually food. And I did a recent social media survey. I know how you're looking right now. I agree. But I did a recent social media survey on shipworms, and I actually found that they were eaten across three different continents: South America, Australia, and then Asia. And we actually see that they're considered a real delicacy in all these different places around the world. And people think they have these amazing health benefits. They eat them because they're a sickness tonic, because it improves their fitness, because they think they are delicious and they are very, very healthy for us and also good for the environment as well. You're eating a pretty good, sustainable source of protein. So I've been thinking of ways with my colleague. How can we bring this to millions of people around the world? Because there's this big problem that we have, and that's food insecurity and people not getting enough protein that's high in quality, and potentially the protein that people do eat being detrimental to the environment. And that's where we thought, okay, maybe the shipworm is a real solution for us here because we can take wood, which is a sustainable resource, and we can turn it into this nutrient-rich protein. I think that's pretty incredible. All right, so I actually did this. This was in my research aquarium back in the UK. I actually grew shipworms and I grew them to try and see what was their nutrient content, were they healthy for us? And these are my students actually seeing the shipworms for the very first time. And I think it's safe to say that they were quite excited to see them. And I'm seeing a lot of faces like this in the group videos as well, just above. So the students were delighted to see these animals because they'd heard about them in my lectures, and they were basically seeing this new aquaculture that we were trying to make for the very first time. And if we go to the next slide, this is um, yeah, this is what the students were actually seeing. This is what they look like when they're out when they're inside of the wood, and they only have these siphons, which are like these tentacles that they stick out of the wood. And one of the tentacles they use for breathing, and one of them they use for expelling waste. And if we pay close attention here, we might see one of these little siphons shoot out a little piece of wood, which is basically a shipworm poop. It's getting rid of the wood that they can't eat. And I particularly like this species because on the siphons, it looks like they've got devil horns, which is very in theme for Halloween. So if we go to the next slide right now. So this is what a shipworm outside of the wood really looks like. And so my colleague and I, we were thinking, okay, we want to try and get these people to eat these animals. We know throughout human history, they've caused all of these problems. So the name shipworm is associated with bad things. People may not like the idea of eating something called a worm, and they may not like the idea of eating something that looks so bizarre. So what my colleague and I did is we came up with a new name for them, and we can see this animal here. Its bivalve shell is on the top right hand side, but most of their tissue is actually outside of their shell, so it's outside of their clothes. So they're basically naked, and because they're not worms and they are actually clams, my colleague and I thought, hey, why don't we rebrand these animals? Why don't we call them naked clams? And so what we're trying to do now is we're trying to demonstrate to people all around the world that these animals called naked clams are actually nutritious, they're delicious, they're healthy, and they're environmentally sustainable. And our idea actually got quite a decent amount of press attention. And we had this article written where these celebrity chefs were coming up with these different recipes for naked clams. And the one that I really like is the one in the top left-hand corner, which is a deep fried and breaded naked clam. I think is absolutely delicious. I would definitely be eating these every Friday night.
I'd try one.
Yeah, fantastic. So, I don't know if any of our students are particularly interested in trying them, but I've actually got some right here. Got some right next to me. I've just taken them fresh out of the wood, so I've got one right here. I think I'm. What do you reckon? Should I give it a go? Does anyone want to see me eat a naked clam live?
Do
Yeah.
it. Do it.
Okay. It's a little bit woody, but I think it's pretty. No, it's delicious. It's absolutely delicious. I encourage everybody to try them.
Did you just eat it raw?
Oh yeah, that's how they eat them in many different places around the world. Straight out of the wood.
Okay, students, would you do what Reuben just did? Would you eat a shipworm? We want to know. All right, tell us. A, yes, I would eat a shipworm. B, no, I would not. C, I'm not sure. D, I already have. I would say yes if it was deep fried, but raw? All right, teachers, the poll is going live. I'm going to pause. I'm going to give you some time. Let's start the countdown. Students, have this existential moment. Would you try a shipworm? Or, as Reuben said, a naked clam? All right, we've got a little bit longer. Okay, So for those of you who are on the Zoom with us, would you just show Reuben with a show of your hands before I reveal your answers? Raise your hand if yes, you would eat a shipworm. What are you seeing, Reuben?
I'm thinking, oh yeah, I've got quite a few. I've got quite a few waves. That's fantastic to see.
All right, well, on our Zoom poll, we have the largest amount is 37% yes, followed by 33% no, and 30% not sure. So I feel like that's pretty positive. Our YouTube results. Oh, Stacy, you're so cute. She said they look yummy like a noodle. And Stephanie's students are saying they're gross looking, but they want to try it anyway. Way to be courageous, Stephanie's class. All right, on YouTube, most people say no, but about an equal amount say yes. I also feel like that's not a loss for the shipworms. So, Reuben, it looks like we have a lot of kids who would eat one, or maybe
I
some are.
that's I think that's fantastic. And our actual social media survey said that 85% of the people that have already tried them like them. So I'm sure of the people that have said they were going to try them, a lot of them would absolutely love them. So
I mean,
fantastic to hear that.
who knows? This could end up on school menus in the future. Maybe it's Shipworm Naked Clam Friday.
Amazing. I would love that.
All right, Reuben, thank you so much for introducing us to the shipworm today and also your incredible and thought-provoking work. It's time now, everyone, for your favorite part of the show. We're going to go live and start asking Reuben your questions. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, just send us your questions using the chat bar. We record them as you send them in, so please only send your question once. We document them and we'll get to as many as we can. And if you're here with us on Zoom, just use the hand function, the hand raise at the bottom of your screen, and that lets me know that you would like a turn. And if we call on you, make sure that you use a nice loud voice. It's not rude. We just want Reuben to hear you clearly. If there's any problems with your microphone, then you can just type your question in the chat and we'll help you out. All right, let's go to one of our YouTubers. We have a question coming in from Candace, and Candace wants to know, can I purchase shipworms so that I can try to eat them, and where can I get them?
Hey, that's a great question. So if you're in one of those countries that I mentioned earlier, where they eat them pretty regularly, then there are specialty restaurants where you can actually buy them. Unfortunately, what my colleague and I are trying to do at the moment is we're still trying to do some experiments where we can actually grow them up to mass scale so that we can start selling them in supermarkets. So if we're lucky with funding, if people believe in our idea, and I 100% think that they should, and we do get that funding that allows us to scale them up, then you can expect to see them in supermarkets near you very soon, or even in restaurants.
All right. I love this question. This is from a YouTuber named Jessica. And Jessica, how thoughtful is this? Jessica wants to know, when did you start your explorer career? And how did you become a marine biologist that studies shipworms?
What a lovely question. Thank you so much. So when I was young, I loved David Attenborough. I'm sure a lot of you know who David Attenborough is. Yeah, 100%. And I remember seeing things like Blue Planet for the first time, and it just blew my mind. And I always knew I was going to be a scientist. As a little kid, I was a little scientist. I used to do little experiments in the garden, probably drove my mum mad. But it was it's really that appreciation for the sea and the fact that marine life is just incredible. It's so diverse. It's so wonderful. It's just really shocking. And I thought I really want to do this. So I went to university, and it was in my second year of university. It was on a field trip, and I just knew then and there I want to be a professional marine biologist and scientist for the rest of my career. So I went to the professor that I liked the most, and I said, I want to do a PhD. I want to become a doctor in marine biology. Do you have any projects that I could get involved with? And the reason I asked him was because he was working on this animal called a gribble, which looks like a little ant, and it also eats wood. And he was looking at the enzymes that this animal produced in its gut to break down wood, because the idea was that we could take those enzymes and we could make biofuels from wood. So we could replace gasoline, we could replace petrol. And I thought that is an awesome idea. You are taking a really, really rare marine animal that no one has heard of, and you're trying to solve one of the biggest problems in the world, which is fuel. So I said to him, "Do you have any projects on the Gribble that I could do my PhD on?" He said, "No, I don't with the Gribble, but I do with the Shipworm." And it was from that point onwards, I fell in love with the Shipworm, and it's been my career ever since. So I'm one of the world's experts on shipworms. I've been working on and researching shipworms for about 15 years now. And honestly, it's been an incredible journey.
That just shows the importance of having mentorship in your life. So kids,
100%.
you never know what your teachers can introduce you to.
Mhm.
We've got a question from a YouTuber named Kevin Tomlinson, and Kevin wants to know, where in the world would we find shipworms? And how many shipwrecks have they caused?
Oh, that's a really good question. So if I'm going to play CSI, so crime scene investigator, and how many shipwrecks have they caused? The answer is we don't know. It's probably many, many thousands. And the reason we don't know is because they eat all the evidence, right?
Oh,
So they cause the ship to sink. And if that's in the middle of the ocean and it sinks all the way to the bottom and then they continue eating it, how are we going to have any records of that? So yeah, it's a fantastic question. It's a
they're
really
perfect
important question.
criminals.
Perfect criminals. That's a brilliant way to put it. Yeah.
Okay, Reuben, this question has actually been on my mind, so I'm so glad that Garden Spot Middle School asked. Why are you working in Saudi Arabia as a marine biologist? Isn't that primarily a desert? What's going
Oh,
on?
that's what a great question. What a great question. Well, if we actually look at Saudi Arabia on the map, it's got a coastline of about 1,800 kilometers along the Red Sea. So in the Red Sea, it actually has the look at that, the longest coastline. And the Red Sea is this fascinating and super important body of water where we think we have some of the most thermotolerance. So this is creatures that they really like the heat. So we think we've got some of the most thermotolerant coral reefs in the entire world. And that's really, really important to study and to conserve this wonderful animal that's also an entire ecosystem. So yeah, that's why I'm there.
Okay, it makes the sense now. I love maps. Maps help with everything.
Yes.
This question is coming from Valencia Homeschool. Are you going to dress up as a shipworm today for Halloween?
Yeah, I've got the costume in my cupboard just behind me. I'm just waiting to go to a party as a shipworm right after this.
Well, Reuben, thank you so much for joining us today, for inspiring us with your work. Do you have any final message for all of our burgeoning explorers that are live with you today?
So firstly, I want to say my pleasure. I want to say happy Halloween to everybody. And thank you so much for all your enthusiasm and your wonderful questions. And what I want to end on is, back when I was your age, I had absolutely no idea that I would become an expert in shipworms. And I had no idea what a shipworm was. And so what I want to say to you all is your life will take many different unexpected twists and turns, and it could happen in the weirdest and most wonderful places. And I think if you just show passion and you show curiosity, your world will take you anywhere. And what I also want to say as well, for many many years, people hated the shipworm. They thought they were a menace. And I just want to make the point that these animals, they play this magnificent role in nature, and we're beginning to understand even more about how important they are, and even that they could become a really, really important food source for us. So I think there's a metaphor in there somewhere to try and look for the goodness in everything. So thank you very much.
Well, that's a beautiful message, Reuben. Thank you. And thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
And hey, students and teachers, thank you for coming. It's such a busy day already, but you chose to engage with us and share your thoughtful questions. And teachers, you've got so much going on, but you came. Thank you for that. We hope that you had a great time, that you've got lots of wonderful ideas and connections to all the things that you're learning. And if you'd like to share more ideas with us, you can reach out to us on social media. Just use the hashtag Explore Classroom. We'll find you. All right, we're going to meet again on November 14th. We will be celebrating Geography. That's hard to say. Geography Awareness Week. And we're going to have an explorer and a design researcher named Nick Okafor. He's going to teach us how maps are really powerful tools. And I'm so excited because I love maps. Maps can tell us stories. We can identify problems with maps. We can even implement solutions to problems. So please join us again on November 14th. Register for this event on our website, natgeoed.org/explore classroom. And when you register, you can request a chance to be featured live on screen with us. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, teachers. Please take a moment to fill out a quick survey that we will be sharing. And we want to know what you thought of today's show, how we can improve it, and what we should continue. So thank you for taking that moment with the chat quiz link. So from all of us at National Geographic, have a wonderful day. Stay curious, keep exploring, and happy Halloween, y'all. We'll see you next time on Explore Classroom. Bye. Worm wave. Worm, goodbye.